More moves are coming, and following what has been a crazy last 24 hours for the Toronto Maple Leafs following a big move regarding Nick Robertson, reports have dropped revealing that more moves are on the horizon for this Toronto Maple Leafs team, particularly surrounding two key players. We'll break down these new reports and discuss what it means going forward as Brad Shilling continues to prepare for a trade regarding the top six. But before you into it all, if you're part of the percentage or aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolute beasts with the support. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for the continued support over here. There's lots to go over today, and obviously yesterday the Leafs made a bit of a surprising move. They re-signed Nick Robertson, and as of now, he is on the team and will be playing, in October when the season starts up. As of now, of course, things can change, but this has opened up a lot of rumors, some reports flying around, and even dating back to last month in July. We know here, Nick Robertson yesterday, in case you missed it, they settled at $1.825 million. All arbitration is done, and rumors, reports, all these different things have started to pick up now surrounding the future of two players, and particularly Max Domi. You can see this here from Leafs Updates. Don't know if there's a more expendable player in the league right now than Max Domi is. And of course, we heard reports earlier, like Brad Shilling himself speaking out back in July saying they want to improve the top six and that they're going to look at every avenue. There's been reports from, Pierre LeBrun, multiple reporters, even in the past few weeks regarding, Max Domi, Bobby McMahon, Cal Yarncroke, all these guys. And now it seems clearer than ever that Max Domi is not necessarily going to be the guy to get traded, but is now among the conversation about, potentially being traded because of the value that he has compared to some of the other guys. And the lines are very, very full right now, and a move has to happen. It's just a matter of which player, but more moves are definitely coming now, especially following the Nick Robertson trade, because he's on the outside looking in. And while that could remain the case, they have to move off of somebody.
And like you mentioned off the top, all the arbitration cases around the league are done now. So I think that things are going to start moving because teams have an idea of, who's going to be making what. And obviously, there's a couple guys that still need to be signed. I feel like those are the final dominoes to fall. But I feel like teams are closer to knowing what their salary cap situation is going to look like heading into the season. So things are going to start to get done. Some trades are going to start to open up. So that could include Kelly Yarncroke and David Camp, like we've been talking about. But it doesn't seem like there's any buyers right now. So the conversation's kind of shifted amongst Leafs fans right now during the summer to what about Nick Robertson? What about Bobby McMahon? And like you just brought up, what about Max Domi? Because Max Domi makes almost $4 million. And when you look at the cap, yes, right now they have about $2 million, just under $2 million in cap space. Can't do much with that. And you want to leave yourself some flexibility heading into the season because anything can happen, right? So you want to leave yourself some flexibility. And if you move off David Camp and Kelly Yarncroke, if that were to happen, then you would, in theory, have enough to go out and get a top line winger, right? You would. And obviously we know that, and we're going to have another video on this, Pittsburgh selling right now. That could be an interesting avenue, although that's could be kind of weird with Kyle Dubas and what he might want from the team. But, when talking about Max Domi, is he the one that's expendable right now? The fan inside of me is saying, don't trade this player. Look what he did last year in the playoffs. He plays with his heart on his shoulder, all of these things. Yes, does he take bad penalties at times, really stupid penalties? Absolutely, but you know what you're getting into with Max Domi. So I feel like he still has a spot on this team, and he has he really wants to win. Like similarly to John Tavares, I feel like he wants to win, and he wants to win here. So I think you want to keep guys like that on the team. But I'm looking at a guy like even Bobby McMahon right now, who had a pretty good input or output, I should say, point wise last season. Could he be expendable right now? He doesn't make that much, but he didn't do a whole lot down the stretch last year either. He was not noticeable whatsoever in the playoffs. He played in almost every single playoff game, if not every single playoff game for the team. Didn't do much. And then, again, like I mentioned, down the stretch in the regular season, didn't do much. So I wonder if they're looking at, moving off of him. So I think things are about to get very interesting around the league. Things are going to start to open up, and the Leafs, I would expect, with training camps opening in September, are going to be actually very active this month.
Yeah, and obviously you can see here, people are starting to talk about it. Signing Robertson means now we can trade McMahon. McMahon has been, like you mentioned, another name. Guy's been teetering on big for nothing, and with a remarkably disappointing playoffs, I don't care to have him on the team. I mean, there's a lot of different, obviously, rumors going around. You look at the team in particular, and again, there's been reports from, again, that hasn't been reports in the past week or so as of, regarding the Nick Robertson stuff. It started to heat up over the past few days, but prior to that, there wasn't too much going on about, Nick Robertson trade before arbitration or anything like that from reporters. It was pretty quiet. And then, of course, it picked up with Elliot Freeman in the past 2 to 3 days. But now you're looking at it from the perspective of, you look at the team, Bobby McMahon, you have Steven Lorentz locked in. That whole, for, sake of conversation, that whole fourth line is locked in right now. But Bobby McMahon, Nicholas Roy, and Calle Yarncroke. And of course, that fourth line is not going to be, I don't think, the same. I think, Dakota Joshua is probably going to be on the third line. But there's a lot of outsiders looking in. You don't see Nick Robertson here. You don't see David Kampf here. And you also don't see, some other players, even Michael Pizzetto, the newly, acquired winger. So someone's going to have to move. Now, on the flip side of things, you look at some of the stats. Bobby McMahon, very disappointing playoffs, very solid regular season overall. If you were just looking at it in a nutshell, like putting up 20 goals, 34 points as a, I guess, technically third liner, though he played a lot of second line, and that's where most of his production came. On the surface level, there should be value for guys like Bobby McMahon, and that's where the big question mark comes now is now that Nick Robertson is settled, this should open up the floodgates to opening up cap space. And also, I think Bobby McMahon should have some value across the league here. He's a good goal scorer. And for teams that, maybe even younger teams who want just a goal scorer on the top line where they can fit him in, seems like a perfectly, decent option. Whereas Nick Robertson now, probably a little bit harder to move, especially given the fact that his production is surprisingly, he still played a lot of games, but his production is more, it's different, I guess I could say, than Bobby McMahon. I would say Bobby McMahon's a bit more consistent, even though he's also given more consistent playing time.
Yeah, last year I would agree with that. And McMahon's also a bigger player. He plays a different style and a style that I think works in the playoffs, although he didn't have a good playoffs. And that could be attributed to maybe because it was his first playoffs, right? And it's a learning curve. I think once you get into the playoffs, I guess you can make that argument. I'm not going to make that argument for him. I thought it was a disappointing playoff. But still, the point production to me is somewhat similar. I'm not saying it is similar, but it is somewhat similar between him and Nick Robertson, as you can see here. And I didn't even realize I completely forgot that Bobby McMahon scored 20 goals last year. That's good production, right? And again, he was spending some time on the second line, so keep that in mind. But I think you're going to have to make a decision here. Now, Nick Robertson and Bobby McMahon make similar money at this point, right? I think you have to make a decision there. I'm not saying it has to be between those two, but if it comes down to it, where no teams are interested in Calle Yarncroke and David Kampf, which I don't know if that's necessarily true. I do think that there could be especially interest in Calle Yarncroke specifically, although I think that he has a spot on this team over David Kampf if we're comparing the two. But I do think that there is interest out there for him. But I feel like there could be more interest around the league for a guy like Nick Robertson or Bobby McMahon. You're shedding less cap, which could be problematic when you're looking at, how much cap can we accumulate to then go out and get a top line wing. So that could be a problem, but there's probably more interest around the league is what I'm trying to say. And again, I think that there's going to be some decisions that are going to be made that might be unpopular coming up here this next month, because again, to me, you look at the lineup, you have to shed some significant cap still. And obviously if teams aren't interested in Calle Yarncroke and David Kampf, then you have to pivot to a guy like Domi, like McMahon. And again, McMahon or Robertson shedding their cap doesn't do you a lot of favors there, because you're still going to need to shed more. So it's going to be interesting heading down the stretch here. There was also reports that last season, at the end of last season, that the Leafs weren't necessarily thrilled with Max Domi's season in the regular season. So keep that in mind. They weren't necessarily thrilled with it. Doesn't mean that he can't bounce back, but keep that in mind, because I think things are about to get very interesting as we head into September, because I don't think the Leafs and Brad Living want to wait until training camp's open to try and figure out who their top line wing is going to be. They have to go out and make a move before then. So it's going to happen this month.
Yeah, and obviously Max Domi's second year of a 4-year deal. He's solid. I think if you move off of Max Domi, it's because you couldn't move off of some of the other guys, or it opens up a spot for the top six there. But it's going to be interesting to see. Also, going to be interesting to see how these lines actually shape up, because we just use these for obviously just discussion purposes. I think things could be vastly different from right now, August 3rd, to when things actually open up. But at the same time, if you remove Max Domi, you're removing a pretty good playmaker, but you got Michelli back, who's also a good playmaker. So it'll be interesting to see how things shape up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. See you guys later.